Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 5. Come on, don't you know by now? Vulcans ain't perfect. Hey, it is Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right here from the heart of Portal 47, Trekland Treks, and letting the dust settle just a bit on all the recent Trek headlines. So you don't get a quick take or a hot take, you get a second opinion from Dr. Trek. Hey, look, I have been writing, editing, archiving, interviewing, commenting, punditting, hosting, witnessing, archiving, and dot connecting, and, okay, fanning Star Trek for, a while now. And I just wanted to say, yes, it's called charades, aka the famous Vulcan's parents episode I never knew I needed, aka a first contact right in your own backyard. Hey, let's start right off with kudos to writers Catherine Lynn and Henry Alonzo Myers. Henry, of course, being the co-showrunner of the show. Catherine Lynn was the second season executive story editor over on Lower Decks. That's her Trek cred, and another reason why this differentiation between animation writers and real writers is hallooey. It's thank you, Uncle Walt, for setting that up. No, Catherine Lynn was working all second season on Lower Decks and is the brain behind Wej Douge. Does that not explain so much? And hold on to your hats, she's also the co-writer for the upcoming, well, yep, those old scientists, starring you-know-who, Mariner and Boimler, and also co-written by Bill Wolkoff from this staff. And a shout out as well to the director, Jordan Canning here, Canadian director, who's already outed herself on her Instagram channel as a huge Trek fan, as she says, huge crush on Q level of Star Trek fandom. It's the dream to be directing a Star Trek. Good on her. She has independent film credits and worked a lot on Schitt's Creek. Oh my God. I don't know about you, but my attention went everywhere. We've been warned what the show was about. But gosh, mother-in-law jokes, homages to Sorella and everything Klingon. I mean, the more I watch these galactic cultures, the more they all start, I don't know, looking similar, which I guess is a great nod toward galactic unity eventually. But oh my God, yeah, Sorella, even the Millers, even things a little Betazoid. Anytime you get into young couples and wacky cultural rituals around weddings. So sure, yeah, a little bit, you were cordially invited, DS9, a little bit of Haven TNG, a little bit Wyatt Miller father there with T'Pring's father, Savet, as well. Plus we get new star canon. Plus we get more Vulcan hijinks. But yeah, what it comes down to, wrap your arms around all of that. What it comes down to, what I said at the top, something I've been talking about for years now, and I've seen fans reacting to this little bit and that little bit this week. Once again, what have you not learned in nearly 60 years of Star Trek? Vulcans ain't perfect. Look, I think we were skewed. I mean, I know the franchise owes its existence to all those young zine writers, most of them female, who were enamored of Spock and all things Vulcan, could not get enough of it. Thank you. That's why we have zine culture. We had fan fiction. We had zine culture, which begat clubs, which begat conventions, which begat media conventions splitting off from old school lit cons, and we have everything that we have today. Okay, yes, you Comic-Con folks, you can thank Star Trek. But what we have to do is we have to blame Leonard. We have to blame Leonard and Spock and even Mark Leonard and Sarek. They painted this picture of Vulcans as being, well, you know, stoic and logical and all that, even though we so easily forget Spock was constantly, the whole existence of Spock was riveted, and what drew those fan fiction writers in the early days was the duality of his human nature and his Vulcan nature, whether it was purely biological or cultural, emo-sociological or whatever. And look, we start right off with the parents being introduced. Okay, a year and a half into the show as strangers to anyone. I'm telling you, not only are Vulcans not perfect, they're pretty damn sneaky. Just hang on to that one for a minute. But look, we start off the bat with Sarek and Spock being introduced to us as not having spoken in 18 years, 14 years. How were we so bamboozled to think Vulcans were so high and mighty all these years? Now, look, I've tried to point this out ever since Enterprise and then Discovery, of all things. Totally different eras, totally different showrunners, but they keep coming back to the same thing. And it annoyed Vulcan canonistas, or would-be Vulcan canonistas, for ages. And some folks who had been so enraptured with the stoicism, with the rationality, with the elegant symmetry of Vulcan culture. These people are pretty devious. I mean, come on. Just ask the Andorians. Just ask the Starfleet Surgeon General's office. Did you ever stop to think about this? I talk about this all the time, but maybe you haven't heard. Do you realize, thanks to Journey to Babel, we get the idea. McCoy is no slough off. I think McCoy is pretty up on his Starfleet Surgeon General's office database. And if not, I think he can figure things out. It's been 100 years that the humans and the Vulcans have been co-founding Federation co-members. They had 100 years since first contact. Before that, in 200 years, no one in Starfleet officially knew about Ponfar or nictating secondary eyelids or a host of other things, Vulcan. Now, look, apparently, I know. Apparently, T'Pol swore Phlox to death. I mean, forget Pike and Una and Ash Tyler keeping the Discovery secret. Apparently, Phlox kept the secret of Ponfar as well. It stayed around for 100 years, a secret, at least not in the official databases. So don't talk to me about Vulcans being too perfect. So we latch into this episode and we're watching T'Pring's parents. The parents I never knew I needed, but here they are. And we're watching them both be devious, be too regal, being able to act on their emotions. As we all know, Vulcans have emotions, they're suppressed, and yes, they are stronger than humans. That's been a franchise caveat for ages. We had people all the way from thinking that T'Pril, her mother, was being too sanctimonious and too snobby, to her father, Savet, having too good a time. I saw someone on Twitter say, don't you think he's the happiest Vulcan you ever saw? Well, apart from Sybok, maybe, in his more manic moments, or Spock when he's out of his moments. Now, this episode revolves so much around the family, but look at the greater Vulcanness that we're talking about here. Again, don't you know Vulcans ain't perfect? Now, look, we've been done a disservice. Spock, Leonard, and Sarek, Mark, Leonard, they were all too perfect. It's taken a while. I myself said in the Enterprise days that it took Manny Koto, by the way, R.I.P. Manny Koto. It took Manny Koto and his gang fourth season to fix the Vulcans that had been skewed earlier in Enterprise. You know, I should have listened to my own hashtag here, texture not trivia. They came up with a great fix. Oh, there were Romulan infiltrators. Yes, but there were also Vulcans who were able to twist the meaning of Surak's original words, the Kirshara, and lead the folks astray after centuries and centuries. So, okay, the Vulcans did a reset. We wind up with 200 years leading into the Spock that we know, but still. And then we see Sarek being not just the devious with his own son, but sure, people squawk about Michael Burnham being slotted into that family. Well, what about Sybok? Sybok was not just there as well, but he was unknown to Spock's best friends, Kirk and McCoy. People are going on and on about the whole triangle here. We're going to get into Chapel and T'Pring and Spock and even M'Benga maybe. But people keep forgetting this is 6-7 years before the events of the original series. This is a whole different cast of characters than who was around for the Kirk era. Kirk's not here. McCoy's not here. Scotty's not here. The only one who is part of both eras is Chapel. And we've retconned her. Sure, she knew about T'Pring, but she thought T'Pring as we're going to see eventually, and it starts here, T'Pring is out of Spock's life. We thought she was a goner. Chapel did. That's why she's shocked. Not that Mr. Spock has a wife at that reveal on the bridge in Amok Time. She's gasping because, oh my God, it's T'Pring. Where did she come from? This is going to happen after all? Aha, I hear you say, but Uhura is part of both of these scenarios. Have you noticed how at no point in the T'Pring episodes is Uhura ever in the same room as T'Pring? Uhura at this point is also a very junior officer. My point is that everybody railing not just about that canon, but about Spock's behavior himself. And yeah, he's been stripped down to being a human. Thank you once again, nod to Faces on Voyager here. Totally stripped down to being human here. And it's played for laughs. And you know what? If you get it held right, there's nobody better for playing with laughs than Vulcans. The only one secondary to that might be Klingons. Again, our best two alien cultures. But Spock, it fits. It fits. But look at the grand picture. Again, Leonard spoiled us. We have our image of Spock frozen in place by 3 years of the original series. Not the movies after. Not his later life. Not what did Spock do his whole life? Forget Admiral Morrow's speech to Kirk. Spock's life has been all about doing what he felt like doing. Look, he's young Spock. We've laughed for years about shouty Spock and smiley Spock from The Cage, even the opening bits and pieces of Where No Man, and even, I would argue, the opening episodes at times. In real life, Leonard is finding the character. He's finding the vibe. But in real life, we've got canon moments that we have on screen, or at least the adventures being dramatized here. Spock is basically a guy trying to find himself. Yes, he's between two worlds. The very thing that attracted those early fan fiction, those zine editors, the early audience to Spock was this battle between the cultures. It's why the Voyager writers and Tim Russ had it easy and at the same time had it difficult to make Tuvok interesting. And to Paul as well. Yeah. So Leonard Spock has been all about finding himself. If it took one speech from Una on his first day on the Enterprise, from the Short Treks Q&A, to settle him down, that doesn't mean anything. He's swinging back and forth here, but that's okay. He's still young, and he's not the Spock we see in 6-7 years, who himself is having his moments. Sure, it's about the spores. Sure, it's about the MacGuffin of the week, maybe. But then look what happens. He leaves the 5-year mission and goes off and tries to purge his emotion. He swings that way. Then V'ger gives him a realization. Then he's killed. Then he's resuscitated. He has to retrain his Vulcanness. He winds up going off on a tear as an ambassador trying to reunify Romulus. He makes the Federation so suspicious of the great ambassador Spock that they send agents out to find him. Look, Spock's entire arc, what we've already seen and what this series is filling in for us, it's not about rationality. Admiral Morrow, I could give his speech and be wrong twice. So this is all fine. This is fittable. And all it does is give you more texture, more subtext to play with as you rewatch the original series. My God, to find out even Discovery, I feel like Discovery's biggest canon give to us, especially in the first 2 seasons, is that Sarek tried to manipulate his kids with the Vulcan Science Academy, not once, but twice. And he got stung both times. But I don't blame Sarek. That's just the Vulcan psyche. Sarek, who wound up with not 1, but 2 human wives. And yes, Sarek is clearly not part of the show. We're clearly into the years of feud. And here's Spock's mother, Amanda. But oh, this episode, Perfect Vulcans, it's not just about the shipping. How about some good old, close to my heart, how about some good old galactic cartography? How does Vulcan have a mystery planet in its own backyard? So yay on this episode for finally making 40 Eridani canon. I know it's in the graphics. It's a lot more, it's more tied down than all the vague references to Vulcan being 16 light years away from Earth. Thank you. And look, this is not made up. 40 Eridani, yeah. It was in the tech manual. It was back in the day. Early fandom had settled on 40 Eridani, a real-life trinary system in the Eridanus constellation, well, at least from Earth. It's out there. We had settled on this primary A and the B and C, which are rotating and rotating around that, and Vulcan being a planet. And no, that is not a moon. That is a sister planet with a huge moon around it. Yeah, kids, you think you're having canon problems now? They were retconning this stuff back in the late 70s, back in the 80s. This has all been worked out ages ago. Now, some of the finer details get hobbled on. There's disagreement, but thank you for this episode. Hey, Eridani B gets mentioned. There's no whip around this. Language around system and sector is a little sloppy. I don't know that the whole Vulcan system, even with a trinary orbiting each other with planets and I don't know about that being over a light year away, because it's only 4 light years from here to Alpha Centauri, from Sol, Earth, to Alpha Centauri. So that's a huge system, even if it is a trinary with a component by, orbiting system for the stars with planets around those. But still, if they're going to talk about the new planet being on the other side of the sector, meaning that's on the other side of the, it could be conversation. We've had conversational round-offs all the time. What comes back to me and what I see fans saying is, how does Vulcan, one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations we know of, including having expats who ran off to form the Romulan Empire a millennia ago, with warp drive, with atomic power 1,000 years ago, how do they not know there's a secret planet over here? Well, is it a secret planet or is it a secret civilization? We've got beings, the Kirkhofians, who have evolved into, well, another dimension. I would think if they wanted to keep themselves shielded, they could, even from the, smart but not perfect Vulcans. I mean, it threw me when I first learned that there was another planet. Now, this is orbiting B and C. It's not interrupting the Vulcan system per se. It's around the B and C components. And you know what? A, B, and C are all very much real stars. The math of this, I will have you know that in 1991, yes, years after the tech manual, French Joseph's tech manual, fandom, he was picking up fandom. They'd all worked this out. But by that time, Gene Roddenberry and 3 scientists working with Harvard and the Smithsonian published a letter where they've decided that 40 Eridani is the Vulcan star. It came from Gene. That's why we've had the hints all along. It's now finally on canon. So, yay. Kirchhoff as a planet with a moon, I'll have you add. The moon is where this Kirchhoffian civilization has been. People say, why didn't the Vulcans know about something in their own backyard? Well, those Kirchhoffians act like they didn't want anybody to know they were there. They were completely happy to bide their time. And, of course, we've had instances of this. I'm not saying their Kirchhoffians are like Metrons. They're not Aldeans. But they're doing what they're doing. And they're obviously non-corporeal, at least in that sense. And you know what? It threw me at first, but I can live with it. I can live with it. Okay. Let me leave that a second. It's time for big things, little things, okay? The other thing that made me so happy for this episode was, as I have been predicting, hoping for, it's also a barometer to see where this writing staff is, and they did not let me down. Dr. Corby. Corby's archaeological medicine. Now, you got the hint early on, Chapel talking about applying for this program, but no, here it is. It's Nemecek right there. Dr. Corby's archaeological medicine. Now, spoiler alert, 1966. Chapel's going to wind up with him. Just so you know, all ye who are worried about the Spock Chapel to Pring triangle here, Chapel is going to be so out of the picture that she comes back to the Enterprise. But it's the Enterprise of Kirk and McCoy and Scotty, and she's a new entity. No one knows of her but Spock. And when she comes back to the Enterprise, she is Dr. Corby's fiancé who is looking for him because he's disappeared. Okay, what are little girls made of? I won't spoil it for you any further. But just to know, that's what a lot of us know. That's where Chapel's going to wind up. So all of this Sturm und Drang about Spock and his emotions and Chapel and what's happening between them. It's partly what's going on there. We've seen the first crack in the wall between Spock and T'Pring. Is it going to heal a little bit, or is this really going to be an ever widening gap? We'll have to see. Will they give us more texture, or is this going to be it? But meanwhile, the attraction between Spock and Chapel can totally happen because we're watching emotional, emo young Spock. He's obviously going to get burned because Chapel's going to wind up with Corby. He's obviously going to be burned, and he's going to change his playbook. He's been so open with Pike and even Una and Chapel and M'Benga. He's been open with them, and apparently, obviously, by the time it's the Kirk and McCoy and Scotty era, he has learned to keep everything bottled up. He's learned to keep everything to himself. It hurt too much. And so what does that mean when Majel's Chapel is going in circles fighting her unrequited love for Spock? Is it really unrequited, or is it so easy in the naked time? Is it so easy at times later on second season for him to let her in a little bit? Why does he reach out to her to do the slapping? I mean, it's okay. It's okay. I want to see. It's to the journey, gang. It's not just where we get there. It's how we get there. And if anything, this whole triangle that they've set up with this series is awesome. And again, they got Corby in there. That and Cybok are the two things that have got me the most excited so far. And I haven't even mentioned, somewhere out there 2 years away, Layla Kalomi is lurking. Okay, some more little things. Thank you for talking about synthesized food. We are 100 years away from replicators. To me, this is just like the difference between away teams and landing parties. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that graphic of the shuttle bay versus a hangar deck again. Maybe that's Captain's RHIP. But thank you for synthesized food. And Vulcans in their strong sense. I mean, it started with T'Pol and Porthos on Enterprise, but it's been expanded to, Vulcans, and they're trying to ignore it, trying to play down, some of them doing a better job than others and not being so snobby, but this whole running joke about Vulcans and their scent of humans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the comedy stylings, once again, of the Vulcan culture. Tip your waiters. I love the shuttlecraft scenes with the side windows shuttered. You know what that does? It avoids having to have, I know CGI makes it so easy now. I know the AR wall is so easy now, but it avoids having to have those windows populated with impulse drive, warp drive, nebulas, whatever's out the window. It's an old DS9 runabout trick. I'm going to take that conversational bit and apply it here every time they talk about the transporter room. Now, look, I know that could just be an homage to the original series. They talked about the transporter room all the time. Although if you look, there are numbered turbo lifts and transporter rooms in Matt Jeffries' plastic signage around the place. But it really wasn't until Next Generation that we woke up and realized we'd need multiple. Well, backstage, it was a realization. It winds up in Franz Joseph's blueprints. But not until shooting times do we get multiple transporters in the original series movies. We get multiple transporter rooms and others on Next Generation cargo as well as personnel. And yeah, Mike Okuda out there putting the graphics that actually say Transporter 1, Transporter 2, and yes, for all you Chief O'Brien fans, the vaunted lovely Transporter Room 3. So here, I'm going to let the Transporter Room pass as the same way the original series would do and just say, we're being conversational. You can scan, you can find your way there. Which transporter room? You know which one, gang. Now, per my recent comment, yes, it was good to see other medical staff in the background on duty in sickbay. Thank you. And oh my gosh, Spock in a stocking cap. What an homage to City on the Edge of... Yes, it's a stocking cap. It's not a beanie. A beanie used to be what plebes and fraternities had with the, like Beanie and C. Oh, come on, people. Get out of the current decade. There was history before this. Spock is wearing a stocking cap in City on the Edge of Forever. And in my mind, he's wearing one here too, complete with the delta and everything. But most of all, Who is the sciences lieutenant on the George Kirk team with the Boimler hair? What I mean, those old scientists, the crossover show, it's only 2 episodes down. Is this the hair and makeup department on a dry run? Was this just a Delta test? Oh, and it was shaped like a Vulcan gong, right? An octagon. But was that little homage when Savet, T'Pril's father, he dings the gong at the dinner? Was that a shout out homage to Mr. Hom's goofy, yeah, Betazoid gong? Of course, Mr. Home had to be drunk to be funny, and this guy Savet is just a hoot. And speaking of food, and hey, all the great new Vulcan canon foods we've got here, can I just say that I guess eugenics war records and the years that actually happened, that can be blown up in wartime. That can be fragmentary records, but apparently cheeseburgers and submarine sandwiches survived World War III just fine. I mean, they looked awesome. I have one question this week. Who the hell are the Treenars? And yes, can't go any further on the character side and the casting side without huge kudos to those 2 parents, right? To Prill, Alora, that's a great Star Trek name, Alora Patnack, and Savet, who many people say stole the show, so kudos, Michael Binier. Now, 2 Canadian actors we're seeing them for the first time. It's good to see fresh faces. My goodness. Alora in this thankless role as T'Pril, it could have been just a one note. She managed not to make it so, but yes, what Michael did with that Savet role, and some people complaining that he was too un-Vulcan. If 2 totally full-blood Vulcans, they've still got a dynamic too. Just because they're Vulcan doesn't mean they don't have social, personal dynamics. And if his wife had been that straight-laced, emblemized by another one of those stiff-necked Vulcan collars, I'll take your Amanda Grayson original Journey to Babel hooded collar and raise you. If he's had that his entire life, how did T'Pring wind up the way she did, as together as she is? But no, it was so much fun. I'm ready for the Pike and Savet show, seriously. So speaking of Pike, after all that Sturm and Drang about being absent from the front of the year, now we've had some action shots, but here, he's the chef in chief. He's the counselor host for his first officer. He's the cultural attaché. He's, I don't know, he can take on any Klingon or Gorn in the galaxy, but he's going to go out for his Charlie Chaplin mugging while he defends his first officer from his potential in-laws. The whole food scenario, the interaction, and the fly on the wall attempt. This was as much a tour de force for Anson as, I don't know, the Elysian Kingdom. I've seen people loving this, and they should for good reason. What an atypical bit for any Starfleet captain to do, much less Pike. Yeah, yes. Now, what's amazing here is right in the middle of the comedy, we do wind up with some serious drama at the end. Is this it? Is this it for Spock and T'Pring? But don't forget, we had a first contact right in the middle of this. Don't forget those Kirkovians. And Pike gets to handle all of it. This was not just a template show. Yeah, the comic end was there, but this was a pretty ambitious show. And when Pike is not being Charlie Chaplin, he's doing his best Neelix impersonation. And I can't get away without mentioning Durek, the little perfunctory who's handling the Vulcan Science Academy admission for Chapel. Kudos to Ryan Turek, but I don't know, his name, Durek, that seems like a giveaway. That's got to be a Romulan agent, don't you think? This is all part of their master plan to dumb down the Vulcan Science Academy. Also have to give a shout out to Dan Jarrett. Seeing George Samuel Kirk played for comedy, and those were cute moments. But every time I see him used in a light vein, it just makes me think, I know how he's going to wind up. And it is a little sobering, no matter what the tone of the current scene is. It's great to see Mia Kirshner back as Amanda. It's best of all to see her in an episode where she doesn't have the weight of the universe on her shoulders, whether it's way back in Journey to Babel or any episode of Disco ever. So yes, I'm so glad she got to have a light moment here, and it's just cool to see Amanda and T'Pring in the same scene together. But no, you got to come back to the core of this episode being Spock, being Ethan, being Jess Bush's Chapel, and Rhea's T'Pring. It's amazing. And I tell you what, the tension in that final scene, if you could harness the energy in the rippling muscles of Rhea's cheek as T'Pring, I think we could power a small moon. One last thing about Chapel. It would not be the first time we've seen a medical Starfleet officer come running into the scene with a hypo to save the day during some Vulcan ritual when Spock was in distress. Okay, just some parting comments. This episode defies description. It's easy to think of its comic tone, its comic side, but there's a lot going on here, and we wind up with that final tone, not just Spock and T'Pring breaking up, but oh my, Spock and Chapel. Yes, it can totally fit into canon, and now all the folks who don't care about canon, what do we call them? Are they the Chalkies, or are they the Spapples? I don't know. They've got something to chew on now until next week or the week after. I also have to mention, I really love the handoff in tone and structure when we handed off the prop, but it was also a handoff from Chapel's early narrative to Spock's takeover of the narrative, the point of view, early in the episode. Did you notice that? It was a very cool little cinematographic directorial choice. It was very cool. And elsewhere around the departments, oh my, Gia's T'Pring outfit, that suit with there's videos online of it being made. Bernadette, oh my gosh, Bernadette Crofts, you've done it again. And I don't often notice music, but I'll notice this one. Did you catch the trumpet cues in and around the Vulcan bits? It's right out of Amok Time. Did you catch the strings cue in Sickbay? Right out of Journey to Babel. And the thing you did not know, Eridani B, when it was discovered to be small and white in 1910, was the first white dwarf ever discovered and cataloged as such. Okay, seminar's over. This is probably a good place to end this second opinion. But what did you think? Hey, leave a comment below. Okay, please. And would you please like and share and subscribe? Boost the signal. Come on. I dare you to subscribe for some sane Star Trek each week. Most of all, if you enjoy this Dr. Trek perspective and our point of view at Trekland, I invite you to go over and check out all of the podcasts, the live streams, our experiences like Trekland Trek's day tours of location sites, much less Portal 47, our backstage package every month, and sure, the Trek Files from Roddenberry podcast and our Tuesday Trekland Live each Tuesday. Check it all out at LarryNemecek.com. Trek well, everybody.